Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. Today's video is one of my favorite kind of videos. It's a strategy video. Strategy is for the Soviet Union in the game Global War 1936 to 1945. I do a lot of different kinds of videos, or I haven't done many videos lately, have I? But I mean, I've done hundreds of videos, probably getting close to 300 now, of all different kinds, and showing pieces and where to get them, and doing rule stuff and all kinds of things. And I really like doing the strategy videos because what it does is it takes all those pieces and it takes all those rules, and then I get to put it together in something that I can create. Like you create your own strategies in any game, right? And in this game I get to create a strategy and I get to make a video about it, right? So anyway, this is going to be on the Soviet Union, and as you're looking over the Soviet Union here, we're doing a flyover. This is about the Motherland, and the Motherland refers to the home country of the Soviet Union. And we're going to be talking about terms like home country and the different advantages, national advantages, the points that you need to score, and all of that stuff, right? We're going to talk about everything, the kind of technologies that you should be developing, and it's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. This is a strategy that I used recently in the summer offensive up here in Prince George, and it was going to work out really well. I had everybody at the table scared that there was nothing they were going to be able to do, except for a couple of things that happened. Just some bad luck when Tokyo fell unexpectedly, and I got diced by one of my closest friends. Or like diced like you can't even believe. Anyway, I'll talk a little bit about that later, but for the most part we're going to go through that strategy and why it is a really good strategy, and talk about a lot of other things to do with this. So we'll be right back. First of all, for the viewers that are just getting into global war, or they want to get into global war and they're not totally up on the rules yet, let's just go over a couple of things that are pretty old hat for the people that have played a number of games, and it seems kind of boring to you. You can fast forward a little bit if you're one of those people. I'm just going to go over a couple of the basics so that people just coming to this video for the first time and not knowing much about the game will understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so you see the area here that is in this color. Not the green color over there, not any of those other colors, but this color right here. That is the Soviet Union. And along the top there as well, that's some terrain up there. That's actually, that's not marsh, that's a tundra up there. So even though it's shaded a bit, that's still the Soviet Union. So what the Soviet home country is that it's all the land zones that are connected to Moscow by land. And so here's Moscow right here. That's the capital of the Soviet Union. And you can see that all of these territories are connected to Moscow. Like there's the ones that are directly connected to it, but then there's other territories. This one's connected to this one, connected to this one. And this one to this one to this one to this one to this one. So all of those territories are connected to Moscow. And as we move out there, the Soviet Union is the largest country in the world and still is to this day. So you can see that color all along there, right? All of those territories that you've seen there are the home country of the Soviet Union. And in fact, the only country that is that color that isn't the home country of the Soviet Union is this island here. So half of the island is Russian, half of the island is Japanese. This island is the only Soviet territory with the Soviet roundel on it that is not part of the Soviet home country. And when the game gets going, there's a territory here called Tanatuva, and this will become Russian as soon as the game begins, but that's not considered Soviet home country either, and that doesn't really matter. Once you play the game, you'll realize that territory isn't worth any IPP, so it does not matter that territory is not Soviet home country. So that's what your home country is. So within the Soviet home country, you see that there's railways, and there's railways all over the map. But when you're in Soviet territory, whether you're the Soviets or whether you're a nation that has moved into the Soviet Union and you're trying to take it over, all over the map there is rail capacity. Within the Soviet Union, the rail capacity is 2. So here, let's move this up a little bit. So like if you wanted to rail a couple of units on your non-combat movement phase, you could rail, say, this unit here and this unit here if you wanted to. You could move any 2 of your units that you want all along the railway, wherever the railway goes, as long as the railway is unbroken, right? Like if somebody has bombed one of your railways and that railway's out, then you have to find a way around on the rail to do that, or stop, stop in that territory. You can still move, but you can't move through a broken railway. But for the most part, your railways are going to be okay, and so you can rail. Like you could rail this guy here all the way down. You could go all the way down to Primorsky Krai over here on the Pacific coast, or vice versa. You could move this guy all the way up to the Eastern Front over there if you wanted to. That's the benefit of the railways. Now, there's also something called strategic naval move, and the Soviets don't have any transports to begin the game with, and quite frankly, you might not build any. Like you may not. What strategic naval movement is that you can move from one port to another port, up to 5 sea zones away, with your transports or anything that is on a transport, like your infantry, or, well, I guess it probably would be an infantry, because the capacity for strategic naval movement is only 2. So that means the transport would be one of them, and then the unit on there, say the infantry, would be the second one, or it could be 2 transports, right? So you could go from your port here 5 territories away if you own the port where you are going to. So the strategic naval movement is 2, but that's not a really big deal to you. What's much more important are these railways. The railways are very important. In fact, while we're talking about railways, let's just talk about one of your special abilities, and the Soviets are the only nation in the game that have this ability. So you have medium factories, and you have major factories like the one in Moscow there, and then you have, let's find another one here. Here we go. Here is a minor factory. So you could move your factories on the railways, and the reason you can do that is because that's historical, right? When the Germans invaded the Eastern Front, the Soviets moved their factories back so that they could still produce all the weaponry and ammunition that they needed to wage war against the Germans without having to worry about their factories getting attacked, right? And so anyway, you can put a minor factory on and use that as one of your rail capacity, or you can put a medium or a major factory on a railway and move it, and you can move it as far as you want, as far as that railway will take you. That will take up 2 rail movement points, so that you won't be able to use any more rail movement if you're going to move a medium or a major factory. And when you do that, like you couldn't move this major factory here over to Primorsky Krai, for instance, and then all of a sudden put like that factory has a capacity of 5. You couldn't put any units on there because your factory was busy being moved that turn, and so it can't be used. Anyway, so that's your strategic naval movement and your rail movement capacity. Just a couple of more basics to go through before we get into get deeper into this. This C zone here, C zone number 6, the Soviets and the Soviets alone have the ability to use northern sea route. Basically what that means is that you're going through the Arctic. The Arctic isn't shown on this map, but basically you see this band here. the border of the map. Just think of that as being a highway for the Soviet ships. So they can move one ship along this strip here, and they would move it, let's just all the way down here, right? And they would come to this C zone down here in the Pacific. This is C zone number 7, and that would take up all of their movement. So whether their ship had a capacity to move 1 or 2 or 3, it doesn't matter. It takes all of your capacity to get through that Arctic route. So you can go there, or you can go the other way. You can go from here, and you can go back the other way and come out in C zone 6 again. So that's one of the things that you can do. The other thing you can do is called scorched earth, and that means that you can torch any one of your facilities. Now I've only put the Soviet facilities on the board. I haven't put anything else on because I wanted to just isolate the Soviet Union in this video, right? So all of your facilities would be like your naval bases, your shipyards, your air bases, your factories, your railroads. You could torch anything you want. Like if it looks like you're going to get overrun by the Germans, you could just say, okay, I'm torching this, you know, just torch everything and move your units out of there. So then the Germans don't take over that air base or don't take over that factory or whatever, right? The problem, of course, is that if you come back later on, those things are torched, right? They're gone. And so basically what you're going to do is say, oh, okay, I'm going to torch this. So you remove it from the game, and now there's no longer an air base in that territory, right? So that's what torching, that's what scorched earth is all about. And you can do that in the Soviet home country, or even if you take a territory outside the Soviet home country, like there's an airbase in Romania, you could torch that airbase if you wanted to. As long as you own it, you can torch it, right? But again, it's only the Soviets that could do that, and that was a historical thing. So I think that's the basics of the cool things they can do. Every nation in this game has something that is unique, and those are the unique things that the Russians can do. One of the cool things about making videos, and making strategy videos in particular, is that you get to name the strategy if you want. I mean, I always like to do that, but it's kind of the creative process, and it kind of sets things apart. People still talk about Middle Earth as a strategy that I came up with years ago, and I might not have been the first person to ever play that, but I was the first person to make a video and name that, so I'm kind of associated with it, and that's kind of cool. It kind of leaves a bit of a lasting legacy for you. And anyway, so getting to this video, this is called Motherland. And you might ask why. Well, at the period of time in World War II, and even to this day, Russia refers to itself as the motherland. And I say Russia, but that's because it's what's called today. But at this time, it was called the Soviet Union, back when it was a communist country. But anyway, at this time, it was referred to as the motherland. And this whole strategy is centered around the motherland and keeping the motherland safe. And when I speak of motherland, I'm speaking of the home country of the Soviet Union in this game. Anyway, going further back in history, they have been referred to as the fatherland as well. But at this time, they were referred to the motherland. And what that technically meant to them, it's defined as the land of one's mother or parents. And a fatherland is described as the native land of one's fathers or ancestors. So Russians used motherland as the symbol of a country that nourished and supported its citizens during times of crisis. And the Great Patriotic War, as they call it, was a time of great crisis, right? He doesn't get more crisis than that. Anyway, so this whole strategy is going to center around the motherland, and so that's why this video and this strategy is called Motherland. So let's get to it. the first thing that you're going to do in the game is you're going to roll for your technologies, right? And the Soviet Union has 3 major factories when this game begins, which means that you are going to have 3 dice to roll for your technologies. And you can see the numbers on the charts here. That's the number, like you need to roll an 8 or more or a 7 or more for these particular technologies, right? It's a pretty simple system in how it works. And for anybody who's played the game before, you're well aware of how it works. But anyway, the very first thing that you're going to do when you play the game, it's the purchase units phase. And part of the purchase units phase is where you roll for your technologies. Now, I've made a video in the past of how to create strategies, and if you haven't seen that video, it would be helpful for you to watch that, because there's certain elements that you need, and I will be using those elements but not describing them like I did back then, right? I just expect that you would have either watched that video, or maybe you will watch it at some point in the future. But one of the things in global war that you need to do in order to create a strategy is you need to decide which technologies you're going to use, because it's not helpful for you to get up to the table there, even if you have your strategy in mind, and then all of a sudden, okay, it's my turn, so what should I do? What technology should I go for? You know, and that's just not helpful. First of all, it's going to make the game drag on forever. But the real problem is that this is a very important part of any strategy, is what technologies that you use, because these can help you, right? These can help you achieve, and I'll show you, for instance, like the very first one that you're going to use in here is absolutely critical in this strategy. And as you go down the progressions of, you know, the order of how you're going to develop these technologies in, that's in order of importance. Like the very first one, the second one, the third one, those ones are absolutely critical. Like you want those as soon as possible, right? And you're only going to be able to go the first 2 spaces until 1939, right? And then of course you can go past and you can finish off the technologies. But you'll roll for the first 3 dice for the first 3 technologies that you decide on. And once you've got to the second space on any one of them, you're going to move on to the next one and start rolling for that. And then when you get to the point where you can go beyond the second stage, then you're going to be trying to get the first technology, second technology, third technology to move along as quickly as possible, because you're going to need those early in the game. Let me just go through the order in which I've picked these technologies, and as this video progresses, you'll see why they did why I picked those ones. So the first one here is improve factories. That might surprise you a little bit, but that is absolutely critical in this strategy. And what improve factory does is your minor factories, you can place 2 units instead of 1. Your medium, you can place 5 units instead of 3. And your major factories, you can place 8 units instead of 5. And so why is that important? Well, when on the turn after Germany and Russia go to war, it doesn't matter who declares war on who, whether it's Russia declares on Germany or Germany declares on Russia, the ground units for the Russians are 1 IPP cheaper. And that's a really big deal, because part of this strategy is that you're going to save money before you get to that point. And so you want to put as many units on the board on that one turn as you possibly can. Like you're going to buy cheap units, you're going to buy infantry. And here, that leads to the second one here, advanced artillery. The advanced artillery is either an advanced artillery unit or a self-propelled advanced artillery unit, or a Katyusha. You probably, as the Russians, you probably won't worry about advanced self-propelled artillery, because a Katyusha is so much better. And so with them, like your attack and defense go to 4 instead of 3, right? And your cost is only 4, your cost is 5 for a Katyusha, right? But a Katyusha, the attack is 5 and the defense is 4, and it can move 2, right? All of them you can pair with your infantry to upgrade your infantry +1 in an attack, right? But also you can use these units for attrition. So if you haven't moved them or used them to attack during a turn, then you can just fire off into the next territory, you know, and it's a faint hope, like it's not like an easy hit or anything. But if you got nothing else to do with those 5 advanced artillery there, you might as well roll 5 dice, see if you can't take off a unit or 2 off the other guys, right? And so that's your first 2. You want to be able to place as many units as you can, and you'll find if you save up a lot of money, you know, like you want a lot of factory production. Here, let's just take a quick look at the factories over here. If you were to not upgrade that technology, so you've got 3 major factories, 1 medium factory, and 3 minor factories. So that's 5, 10, 15, 18, 19, 20, 21 units you can place on the board on a turn. That's all. You can't place any more. You can place militia on there, but you know, like, you don't need to place 40 militia on. Militia are fine and everything, and they're even better for Russia than they are for most people, but that's not going to be helpful. That extra factory production is going to give you instead 8 times 3, that's 24, plus your medium factory, that's 29, plus 2 times your minor factories, 35 units instead of 21, right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so you've got 3 minors. Anyway, what a big difference that is. And you know, like, one of the things you might want to do during the pre-war before this happens is you might want to either add a factory, or you might want to upgrade one of your factories. Like in order to get an extra dice, you could upgrade this factory here to get to make that 8 units you could place there instead of 3, right? Or instead of 5, sorry, if it was upgraded. The other thing is you've got these minor factories up here. Both of those would look good upgraded to a medium factory. I wouldn't do both of them though. Like, if I was to do one of them, I'd probably upgrade this one here to a medium so that you could place 5 units over there. The reason this one instead of the other one is you've got factories that are up here in the north that are closer to that one. This one's kind of isolated down here, and the Germans can be coming across here, and it just adds to your defense there if you could do that, right? And so upgrading one of your factories will be very helpful. And on that turn where you're putting lots of units on, that's why it's absolutely critical that you have this factory as that factory upgrade, the improved factory technology. It's absolutely critical that you have that one for this strategy. So anyway, let's and then we've talked about advanced artillery. That is just one of the best unit things that you can get. And with the advanced artillery, you can buy a lot of those. Like, it doesn't cost more than regular artillery. It still only costs 4 IPP. So you could buy those for 3 IPPs on that one turn and place tons of them on there. So depending on how much money you're able to save, like, you could have tons of infantry and advanced artillery that you put down in one turn. The last game I played as the Soviet Union. I had $126. I think I placed something like 55 units on the board on one turn. That's a lot, like 55 units, and that's including militia, right? But tons of them were these advanced artillery, right? And then after that, that's when I started building the bigger ticket ones, like your medium tanks and your aircraft and things like that. But I had the basis for what I needed. I had all those small ground units and tons of advanced artillery that after I was able to move them to the front, I could be using them for attrition, right? And so that's going to help you out in that fight for the Eastern Front. So the next one we've got here is wartime economy. I don't need to say too much about that. If you played this game, then you understand that wartime economy is maybe the best overall tech that you can get you're just rolling dice and you're getting extra money every turn. I didn't place it first because like I showed you, you want this one as soon as you can possibly get it. If this one takes you an extra turn or two to get it, that's okay. You can't start using it until you're at war anyway, right? And so the next one I've got there is your advanced mechanized. The advanced mechanized, if you're in anybody in a ground war, the advanced mechanized is one of the best units that you can get. It doesn't matter if you're Germany or Russia or anybody else that's going to be involved in a ground war. Advanced mechanized is an awesome unit because you're getting a mechanized infantry unit for the same price as a regular mechanized infantry unit, but you get to, when it comes to blitzing, you get to pair 2 to 1. So 2 of these advanced mechanized infantry units with 1 tank instead of 1 to 1. That's a pretty big deal. Plus, your attack and defense values go up by 1, right? Your attack 4, defense 5 instead of attack 3, defense 4. But again, the cost is exactly the same. It's still only 4 IPP, right? So getting a bunch of these into your game as the Russians, who are heavily involved in a ground war, that's just awesome. So the next one is long-range aircraft. Now this one would be good for anybody in the game, long-range aircraft, right? I mean, long-range aircraft is great. So all of your aircraft is +1, and your strategic bombing units, whether they're heavy strategic bombers or regular strategic bombers, they're +2 in their movement, right? So that's just going to help anybody. And you've seen the motherland of Russia there and how big it is, right? So being able to go further is definitely going to be helpful to you. Like you might want to even put that ahead of advanced mechanized infantry. I wouldn't put it ahead of the other 3, but definitely it's going to be right around 4 or 5, right? It's up to you. So the next one, heavy armor. Now we're starting to get into things that are not necessarily a big part of your strategy, right? But they're just, like you've got dice and you've got to roll them, so you might as well pick something. I picked heavy armor. The only thing I don't like about heavy armor is the cost per unit. It costs 8 IPP to buy one of those units, right? And you're going to attack at 8, defend at 7. They're going to move 2, they're going to blitz. You get target selection. If you roll a 1 on vehicle class units, you get to select the unit that you kill. It doesn't work, of course, on aircraft, but on any unit smaller than an aircraft, like any type of ground unit, you choose the casualty. The problem is that when somebody else has target selection, they're taking off your heavy tank. It's too bad that you couldn't exempt heavy tanks from target selection, or if they got more hits to take them out or something. But because of the cost of buying them, it's kind of a luxury item. Great unit to have. You can blitz with them. You could blitz 2 of these guys with one of these. Like that's very powerful, right? But again, the cost of 8 is pretty rich, right? And so the next one I have is heavy strategic bombers. And that's this one. Now, the last 3 that I've told you about, and the next one as well, there's a point that's available to the Russians. It's called technological superiority. And so that's why I'm getting into this one. This one I'd probably put further down the list, but for the fact that you actually get a point. And when you start getting down near the end of the game, like, it's not like you're rolling the dice and you're hitting every time. Like, it might take you the whole game to get any one of these technologies, right? Even when you roll for it time after time after time. And so you kind of want to get to rolling these ones a little bit early, just so that you can finish them off. Once you finish them off, then it's kind of a relief. But a heavy strategic bomber is actually pretty awesome too, especially late war. Like if everything goes to plan, if everything's going well for you, you put a couple of them on the board, you can basically wear out anybody you want, whether that's the Germans or the Japanese or anybody. Like you can lay waste to them, because those things are really powerful. I mean, they're expensive too. They're a luxury item, It costs 13 to buy one of them. But if you wanted to strategic bomb somebody, 3d6 bombing damage, right? Carpet bombing, you get 5d12 rolling at 2. I mean, that's pretty powerful. Defense of 3, like they're no slouch on defense, right? Like a regular strategic bomber is almost useless in defense, but these ones are actually 3, and their movement is 6, so the same as a strategic bomber. 8 if you've got the long range technology, and could be 9 if you had an air base that you were starting at, right? The intercept is 2, so that's not too bad either. You know, when you're going in on a bombing run and somebody tries to intercept it with their fighters, that's pretty handy. You might take a plane out or 2 with that. So anyway, that's not something that I would really want to get, except for the fact that you can get a point if you get all 4 of these technologies. So that would be long range aircraft, heavy armor, heavy strategic bomber, and the next one on the list, which is rockets. Now this is a completely useless technology. It's going to be better in version 4, if it even is in version 4, but in version 3 it is not very good. For 6 IPP you can buy a rocket, and the best thing that you can do is take off 6 IPP from somebody. So chances are you're going to roll something less than a 6, right? And that's all the damage you're going to do to somebody. It's not a very good one, but it goes towards technological superiority, and so in that sense it is useful to you, because you will, if you get these other 3 here, this one, and this one, without this one, then you've just lost a point, right? So that's why that one's on the list. And then next we've got radar, and that's down here. And radar is pretty handy, but not so much for the Russians. It can be, because you've got some air bases there, and so that's pretty handy. What it means is that you can scramble as many fighters or jet fighters as you want into the next zone, you know, whether that's a land zone or a sea zone. You, rather than just scrambling 3, you could scramble 10 if you had them. But you know, it would be a better technology for sure for the Germans or the British, because they probably have more planes than you do, right? And plus they're more concentrated. They're in a smaller space, their home countries, and so there's not so much territory. Like Germany, you put one of the, you get that technology, and you put all your planes in Berlin. I mean, you can cover your entire either Berlin or in I'm just looking there, Western Germany. Then you can cover your entire home country with planes if you put them all in one location, right? Or you split them up and put them in both locations. You can intercept anybody coming in, or defend any territory. So radar's handy. Also, it gives you +1 fighter interception. So like a regular fighter, that would give you'd be rolling at 4s. And if you had a jet fighter, you'd be rolling at a 6. And so, I mean, you could be taking out people's fighters just for them coming in and trying to do some strategic bombing against you, right? You got a pretty good chance of knocking them out of the sky. And then the next one here is your jet fighter, and I've got a MiG here. So anyway, basically what that is a really good fighter. It's an advanced fighter, right? Again, it costs you a bit too much. Costs 2 more than a regular fighter, but this one isn't so much out of the realm of possibility like the heavy armor is. Your attack is 8 and your defense is 8, so you're +2 on those, right? But your interception are 5 instead of 2. Your movement is still the same as a regular fighter at 4, and again the cost is 12, but you can put them on aircraft carriers, although you're not going to build any aircraft carriers for the Russians, and that's why this one is lower down the list. If it was part of the technological point, then it would be higher on the list, but because all it does is give you the jet fighters, then sure, you know, put it on the list, but quite a ways down. Um, let's be honest though. I mean, jet fighters would look good in anybody's army, right? It's just that those other things would look better for the Russians for this strategy. And so the last one I've got on the list there is improved construction. That's not really going to help you very much. I just put it on there because it's not completely useless either, right? Like your construction's going to be cheaper and faster, and shipyards are higher capacity, but who cares? You're never going to need to build 8 ships at once for the Russians, right? Like you'd be lucky if you have to build 2 ships at once. So that's not really going to help you for that technology. And all these other ones here are completely useless for you, like completely useless. Even if you do build yourself a battleship, you're never going to build a heavy battleship. You don't need anti-submarine warfare. You've only got 1 convoy line, and it's not worth anything. It's only worth 2 if the United States decides that you can have that 2 IPP. Super subs or advanced submarines, like you're probably not going to buy any of those. Sure, if you started the game with that tech, thanks, but advanced carriers, where are you going to sail to? Like really, the only one that might, like if you had developed all these technologies and you still had dice left and you might as well get something, then the one that I would go for is the attack transports, because late game, I mean, you're going and maybe you need to pick up a territory, or maybe you need to eliminate somebody else's point somewhere. That can help, right? You put a tank and a infantry on, and the tank can get off on the first round of combat. Sure, that can help. So if you've got time left and you've still got dice left, then that one, okay. But the other one's completely useless. You'll probably never use them. Anyway, so that's the technologies that I'm using. Bear in mind, if I had a different strategy, I would have my technologies in a different order. But for this strategy, the Motherland strategy, this is the order that I would recommend building these technologies in. So let's move on. Now, if you're playing the Soviet Union in this game, that means that you have more than just the Soviet Union units to move. You're also controlling the Republicans in Spain, and you're controlling the commies in China. So let's talk about Spain for a minute first. The Spanish Civil War isn't nearly as important as it is for the nationalists. For the Comintern, it's just not that important. So what you need to do to win that war is you need to take over all 6 of the mainland Spanish territories. There's some colonies as well, but those are inconsequential. You need to take over the 4 that you see that the Republicans have now, plus these other 2. And it looks like that'd be easy because you've already got 4 out of the 6, right? But it isn't. First of all, you're by yourself. There's only one of you. And on the other side, the nationalists, they're supported by both the Germans and the Italians. The Italians don't have anything to do with their money. They're just nobody can attack them, right? So they can put as much money into Spain as they want. And the Germans, well, they have more money than the Russians. The Russians only get 8 IPP to begin this game, and that's going to stay the same for quite a while. Until they start getting close to war, because there just isn't very many peacetime income increases in the works for the Russians. In version 4, that's going to change. Russia is going to change big time in version 4, but I'm not going to talk about that at all today. I'm just so you know, in version 3, Russia does not have many peacetime income increases. So if you're going to fight the Spanish Civil War, that's going to cost almost half of your income throughout the pre-war era. And Spain is not worth any points to the Comintern. None. It could be worth points. It could be that you have a port, a freshwater port. That's one of your points, right? But you can also get that in Mother Russia. You don't need to go to Spain to get that. It could be that you get points for having a territory like this one here that is worth $1 value. See, it's worth $1 or an IPP. There's a couple of them there, but again, you can get all those points closer to Mother Russia. So those points are not something that you can count. The only bonus you get out of winning that war is that you get one free infantry every turn after you win the war, and it gets placed in Moscow. And that's nice and all, but is it worth half your income for the first 7 to 10 turns? I don't think it is. Whereas the nationalists, they're supported by the Italians and the Germans. If they win that war, they each get a point, and those, that's 2 points. 2 points could be the difference between winning and losing. Could mean the difference between third place and first place in this game. Those 2 points, right? They get them right away. The only way they don't get those points at the end of the game is if one of them or both of them don't have their capitals, right? So if Rome has been taken over by the Allies, for instance, then Italy won't get its point, right? If Berlin is gone, then Germany won't get its point. But other than that, they collect those points like you can put them in the bank. It's up to the bank to get robbed after that, and that could happen. But it's not likely that they will lose Berlin. It could happen, but not likely, right? So Spain is much more important to the nationalists than it is to the Republicans. Having said that, though, I would put something in there on the first turn, right? Unless Germany, like, they attack and like the nationalists will go first, right? And Germany will buy something for them, and they'll make an attack against you, and probably get you down to 3 territories, maybe even 2. But that's probably not going to happen, 2. But see how it goes, right? Like maybe Germany doesn't put much money in. Maybe Italy has got some grand designs on Africa or something, or the Middle East, and they don't put any money in there. Maybe this, maybe that. Like, if you get some good luck in there, then sure, chase that point, or chase Spain. If nothing else, you'll take away those points for the other guys, right? But if things are not going that well, I wouldn't spend the money in there. I just wouldn't do it, right? So the kind of things that you're looking for is you get a recruitment roll in there. So you'll count up the number of territories. Let's say at the end of the first turn, you have the 4 territories that you have now. Okay, so there's 4 territories. So you get to roll a d12. If you get a 4 or less, then you either get a free infantry or 2 free militia. That's a big deal because that's about as much as you can afford as the Russians. So that's like getting a free turn full of stuff for the Russians. The other guys, I mean, they could be putting fighters in there, right? But you can't afford to put fighters in there. You literally do not have enough money to do that, right? The most you can probably do is put a mountain infantry or an artillery in there, right? That's half your income right there. And so if you get some good luck, like if they attack you and you defend well, and they have very few units left, and you get a roll or 2, like a couple turns in a row, or 2 out of 3 you get rolls, well, yeah, maybe keep trying there, right? But if things are not looking good, don't keep putting units in there. Honestly, just don't do it, because it's not going to hurt the Germans and the Italians if they have a little bit more attrition in Spain. It's really not a big deal to them. It is a big deal to you because of how low your income is. So that's Spain. Don't worry about Spain too much. If you get it, but don't worry if you don't. Let's talk about China. Unlike Republican Spain, Communist China is a much bigger deal. The problem with Communist China is that it is a faint hope at best. It comes down to luck, and there's nothing more to be said for that. Like, it is just pure shithouse luck. You only start with 1 territory right here, and you've got some units in there. Like, you've got 2 militia, 2 mountain infantry, and a cavalry. The problem is that the nationalists, I didn't set the nationalists up, but they've got 5 territories. They got lots of units in there, and then the other units that I set up are the warlords, right? So what I say by it's lucky is that one of the things that you can do, and you're going to go long before the nationalists do, so you get a chance to try to influence warlords. And you count up the number of territories that you already own. So you already know it's just one, right? Now, out of the money that you have on hand, you can spend up to that much money, up to a maximum of 3. Like if you had 4 territories, you could still only spend 3, right? But you have 1 territory, you could spend an IPP if you wanted. I mean, you don't have much money. You might want to buy a militia instead, right? Because if you spend that $1 on this roll, then you're not putting any units down there. The nationalists can overrun you, right? Pretty easily, and then you never surrender as the CCP, but for all intents and purposes, you're out until something happens and you're brought back in again, right? Like the Russians get in there and liberate a territory for you. So what happens for influencing then? The first warlord that you'll try to influence is this one up here, right? And the reason you're going to try to influence them is because they have 3 territories, and their territories are worth money as well. Because you want to get units and you want to get money, and you see how many units they got there. What is that? 3, 6, 7, 8 units that you could get just on the roll of a dice. So you roll a d12, and let's say you spent that extra $1, so you got that makes 2. You've got to hit a 2 or less in order to influence this warlord. If you don't get that roll on the first 2, maybe 3 turns, then it's over for you in China. Sorry to say, but that's the truth. It is just over for you. And so it's luck. Like, it's too bad that that's the way it is, but it's just pure luck. If you get that though, holy moly! Like, all of a sudden you're styling, because then all of a sudden, like if you get it on the first turn, you get your roll. Well, there's more money there for you. There's more units there for you. Like, you're just about as strong as the nationalists at this point. And then the next roll, you've got 4 territories, right? You could spend a couple of bucks there, and all of a sudden you're rolling at 6 or 7. Then you can influence the next one. Like, here's a warlord down here that's got 2 territories, right? So you roll to influence this guy. He's got some money here. He's got some, like, these are worth money, these territories, right? So your income goes up, your unit count goes up, and now you've got 6 territories. Wow, now you spend a couple of bucks and you're rolling at 8. Like, it just snowballs. But it's that first roll. It's getting that one warlord there. If you can get that warlord, then you're on your way. If you can't get that warlord, then you're going to be in tough to be a factor in China. So that kind of sucks, but hey, you never know, you could get lucky, right? But if you do get lucky, then your goal is to try to get them to be a major power. Your first concern is with the well, there's 2 concerns. There's the nationalists and the Japanese. So if it looks like the Japanese are going to attack China, then you're going to want to have a truce with the nationalists, and both of you are going to fight against the Japanese. Now, it could be that Japan declares war on China because the CCP is getting too strong. So if they declare war on China, then any warlords that aren't already scooped up go to the nationalists. So then the CCP aren't going to get any bigger without fighting somebody, right? Like, they can take territories, but they're not going to be getting them for free anymore. And so all those other units will go to the nationalists. And like, I don't think that the Japanese can be successful if they completely ignore China. Like, there's just too much money in there. There's points in there for them. There's a victory city in there in Nanking, right? Like, I don't think that Japan can ignore that. They can make it a secondary target, in which case you might be fighting the nationalists. But as far as a primary target, it's never a bad idea for them to attack them and make, say, the Dutch islands their secondary target instead, right? They're probably going to take 2 or 3 things out before the Americans get in the war. Like, there's also the British colonies down there. There's India and there's Anzac, like Australia, right? So there's some targets for the Japanese to go after. The question is, will that primary target be China, or will it be somewhere else? And so that's going to dictate who you're going to fight against there, if you get that role. If you don't get that role, the nationalists are probably going to take you out, no problem at all. You need to hit one roll though before the nationalists come after you, and they could come after you on the first turn. It's probably more likely they do it on the second turn, because there's only one territory that's adjacent to you, and they don't have probably don't have enough units to take you out here, right? So they're going to have to move some units in there, then take you out. So you've probably got 2 turns, at least, maybe even 3 turns, to try to influence this warlord. If you get it, great. If you don't, well, time to move on, right? it's the Soviet Union versus the world after that. Anyway, so let's move on to Mother Russia. So let's take a quick look at the assets that you have to begin the game, and basically what you have to work with, right? And also your income and the increases. So let's just let's say a few words about income first. Now, some people may be under the wrong impression, if they started with version 2, that Russia has a wartime economy. They don't. They have a total value of land zones. So they've got a full income, but they don't have a wartime income, which means that they don't have to reach a certain threshold as far as money goes, as far as how much money they have for an income. They don't have to reach that in order to declare war on somebody. All they have to do is they have to make it to July of 1939. Then once they are in July of 1939, they can pretty much declare war on anybody, except for the CCP, except for somebody on their own side, right? But they could declare war on any of the Axis or any of the Allies. They don't have to declare war on the entire faction. They would just simply declare war on one of those nations, right? And there's like their dilemmas. That's what my friend Morton, who is the lead designer of this game, calls them, dilemmas, where there's consequences for everything that you do in this game. So there could be some benefit to declaring war on somebody, but at the same time there could be some drawbacks. And early in the game, like in July of 1939, that's too early. You just don't have enough money. The drawbacks are definitely going to outweigh the benefits. But anyway, they do start with 8 IPP earlier. Let's just take a look at this thing up here. I put this card down here. So they start with 8 IPP, and it's unlikely that will change until July of 1939. There just isn't many opportunities for them to have peacetime income increases. And what that means is, before they're at war with another major power, there's not very many opportunities for them to increase their income. Like if Japan possesses a new land zone adjacent to USSR home country, then that will give them +2 for each country that happens. So that would probably be Japan taking out one of the Mongolian territories, or 2 of them, right? Or even going through China and getting up to Xinjiang here. Let's move this back so show you what I'm talking about here. So if Japan were to take one of these territories that borders on, actually they wouldn't be able to take this one, because this will be Russian when the game begins. But if they were to take out any of these territories, well, not this one, well, this one, or this one, then that would be +2. Or if they were down in the Middle East or wherever Japan takes a territory, that will increase the Soviet Union's income by +2. So that's not much of a big deal, but it's more of a big deal if it's Germany or Italy that does it. Because if Germany or Italy takes a territory that is adjacent to the Soviet Union, hang on a sec, I just disturbed something over here. Okay, so if they take a territory, like it could be this one, could be Turkey, could be Iran down there, could be any of the Baltic states up here or Finland, right? Any territory that's bordering on Mother Russia, then the Russians get a D12 income increase. So the Russians will immediately get to roll 1d12, and whatever that number is, whether it's a 1 or a 12 or anything in between, they add that immediately to their income. They don't collect that much money right away. They wait, like they'll add it to their income. And so when their next turn comes around and it gets to the end of their turn and it's the collect income phase, that's when they will collect their money, and that increase will already be in there. And then in July of 1939, there's what's called the sleeping bear rolls. And so every turn, regardless of what's going on in the game, the Russians will roll 1d12, and they will do that every turn. And they'll do that at the start of their turn, and add that much to their income every single time, right? So that could happen in peacetime. And then also, if the USSR is attacked by a major power, whether it's Japan or Germany or Italy or whoever, then they just go to full income, and their full income is 46 IPP. 46 is the number that you would get if you added up all of these red numbers that are in the Soviet Union. That gets you to 46, and so that's their full income. The next thing we're going to talk about is diplomacy. When I'm talking about diplomacy, I'm talking about your relations with all of the nations on the board. I'm not talking about a certain expansion set called diplomacy, okay? So this is all about how you relate to the other factions, how you relate to the minor powers, and what you should be looking for, not only in this strategy, but in any strategy when you're playing the common turn. So one of the things that you might want to consider, something that I didn't do in my last game, and was one of the reasons for my downfall, was the first rule of the Motherland strategy is don't talk about the Motherland strategy. I kind of revealed it, and then everybody knew what I was doing, because it didn't look like anybody could stop me, right? But of course, then I had some bad luck. I mentioned that earlier, right? But if I hadn't told anybody, they still wouldn't have known what I was going to do, right? So it might not have been such a big deal to them, and they might not have tried so hard to fight me. They might have tried to fight each other as well, right? So try not to talk about it. Try to make yourself look as weak as possible in this game. And the good thing about Russia is, like we just talked about, they only got 80 IPP income, right? They've got China to worry about. They have Republic in Spain that they might be sending some money to. And so they don't have much money. They're going to look weak. Basically, what you want to do is to make yourself look like you're not much of a threat to the other factions, because there are 3 factions in this game, and as the Russian, you have the best opportunity to manipulate the way the diplomacy goes in this game. Both sides will want you to work with them to try to defeat the other side. Like, you're probably the weakest of the factions, right? But that doesn't mean it's harder for you to win the game. It just means that the amount of units on the board and the amount of money that you have at your disposal, you're the weakest faction on the board, right? But so everybody tries to get you to try to help them beat the other strong guy, right? And that you can use in your favor. Generally, what happens in games is, at least what you should be doing, is let the player who's the newest play the Soviet Union, because it's the easiest to play, right? There's not a lot of naval combat. Naval combat is a lot more complicated than land combat, and so it's easy to play the Soviet Union. Things are more black and white for the Soviet Union. But when you get to be an advanced player and playing the Soviet Union, that's when you can start playing these mind games, right? And that's what I'm talking about, is the diplomacy of the game. You should be looking for places where you can make deals. Now, like, there's the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. That's a pact that you can sign with the Germans in 1939. Generally speaking, it works out better for the Germans than it does for the Russians. I'm not going to go on and on about that. I think most of you probably know what that is, and if you don't, you can check it out online and see what it is. But generally speaking, it helps out the Germans more than it helps out the Russians. I think most people have come to that conclusion. However, that doesn't mean that you should completely discount it, because one of the things that you want to manipulate is the fight between the Axis and the Allies. You don't want one side to beat the crap out of the other side, because they will become too strong and they will win the game. Like, there are 3 factions in this game. You want to be the one with the most points, but if the Allies have too many points, or if the Axis have too many points, then you are not going to be able to match them. Each side can get 18 points, just regular points. That's not counting the victory cities. But the difference is that like, even if you get 18 points as the Comintern, you've only got one capital or one victory city, and that's Moscow, right? Whereas, say, the Allies can get 18 points, and they've got a number of victory cities potentially that they could have, right? Like, they could have Washington and London and Nanking, and they might have taken Paris back. They might have taken Rome, right? There's a number of victory cities that they can get, and so they will have more points than you. I've played the Soviet Union before, where I did just about as well as you could possibly do, playing this Motherland strategy, and I was beaten by the Allies because of that fact, because they could do more victory cities, and because of the last turn they were able to take a couple of points off me. And I'll show you what I mean by that, and why the Motherland strategy is so important to protect the Motherland. There was just nothing I could do in that game at the end. I just got overpowered in the East. But anyway, you want to manipulate them. You don't want the Allies to get too strong. So signing the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact might be in your best interest. And the other thing is, up here in Finland, if you're like, a part of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is that you can take this territory here, right? What is that, Karjala or whatever, the first territory in Finland. And then, so when it's time to go to war with the Germans, then all you have to do is make a combat move into there, combat move into there, and there you go. Finland is all yours. So that helps out right there, right? If you don't take that territory to begin with, if you don't sign the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, you just take that territory. Then the Germans get the units that are in these other territories, and now it's them looking at using them against you, rather than them for sure being on defense, right? But the other things are that you can get the Baltic territories, and you can get the first 2 territories in Poland there easily, right? Almost handed to you. I think you only have to throw out that whole thing down south there. You only have to fight one guy and you get all those territories. So that is that helps a little bit, but like I was saying though, I think it helps the Germans more. So there's that part of the diplomacy. As far as the neutral countries go, like the minor powers, we more than often we refer to them as the neutrals. One of the things that is important is that you can't attack them until July of 39, and when you do, you have to keep that income separate from the income that you're trying to get to as far as your income increases. Like, you do get to collect that money, but you don't add it into the other part of your income. So in other words, you have to have 2 markers on the income chart, one to show how much territory you've taken, and one to show what your true income is at. So that's something that you need to know. I'm sure most of you know that too, though. But yeah, like balancing the Axis and the Allies, and manipulating that is something that is really important, but something that, like I said, that you keep to yourself, right? You don't want them to know that you're manipulating them. You want them to think that you're, like you don't have much to do with this game, right? You want them to fight each other. Like, if you could just plant a little bug in one of their ears, like, aren't you worried about those UK guys over there? They just built a transport, you know? Like, gee, you just throw these little things in there. A little bit here, a little bit there, right? You don't have to go for a big meeting in the backyard for 3 hours, you know, trying to convince somebody to do something. You're sitting at the table, you just throw these things out there. Make yourself look small, make the other guys look big. Because if they look big to each other, then they're more worried about each other, than they're worried about you, right? And there's little things that you can do, like at the beginning of the game, the Italians might want to take out Abyssinia, and the only country that can lend lease to Abyssinia to help them out, or to help the French out, is if the Russians send something down. So if the French player says, "Hey, can you lend lease me something?" Well, what you got for me, huh? Oh, well, I'll give you the money back. No, that's not good enough. I don't need Abyssinia. I don't care about Abyssinia. I tell you what, I'll lend you an infantry down there, $3. You got to give me a tank later in the game. I don't care who it is. Could be France. Could be the Americans. I give you an infantry. You give me a tank. No. Okay, then. Have fun in Abyssinia. Right? Like, you just make little deals if you can, and if you can't, don't worry about it, right? One of the things that you can do later in the game, and this is depending on how the battle with Germany is going. Like, if you're looking like you're getting close to securing the Eastern Front, one of the things that you can do, if Germany is getting pressure on the backside, like on the Western Front, from the Americans and from the British, then you can help them out. Sweden's got a pretty big navy up here, right? One of the things in this game to do with diplomacy is that if the Russians attack or declare war on Norway, then Sweden goes to the Germans. And Sweden's got quite a few units, and they've got quite a few boats, right? So you talk to the German player, take them aside, say, hey, look, like if you take all those boats and you combine them with the boats that you have, all of a sudden you've got an invasion force into Britain, and I'll help you out with that. Just like whatever's happening in the game, think of something, right? Like, just don't attack me for a turn or something, whatever it is that you need in that game, say, I'll do that for you. So then you get Norway, and he gets Sweden, he gets those boats, he's attacking the Allies. There, you've just kind of evened out the fight between the Axis and the Allies, right? Plus, you've gained some points with the German player, right? Just little ways that you can manipulate this game without tipping your hand too much, right? The beauty of the Motherland strategy is that how you play it early in the game is how you would play every game. Like, it doesn't tip your hand what's going to happen. You weren't able to do anything early in the game anyway, and so doing this looks exactly the same as if you were going to do anything else. And let's face it, I mean, there's not a ton of strategies for the Russians to do, right? Like, if you've got designs on taking all of South America, that's probably not a winning strategy, right? While you're over there, then Moscow's getting swallowed up by the Germans. But anyway, anything that you can think of during the game that's going to help you, that's going to give you a slight edge, that's going to give the Axis a slight edge over the Allies, or the Allies a slight edge over the Axis, whatever you need to happen, try to make it happen. Try to be subtle about it, and see how it goes. The most important moment in this game for you, and really maybe the most important moment in the game at large, is the declaration of war between the Russians and the Germans. Very, very big deal. And I'll tell you why. There's something called the German surprise attack. So this is what it says. If and when Germany declares war on the Soviet Union, all German land air units get +1 attack, and all Soviet units get -1 defense on all rounds of combat, including the blitzes. The Soviets may not attack more than one German possessed land zone on their next turn. So if Germany declares war on Russia, they get +1, the Russians get -1. They're going to do some damage, right? And so that's going to hurt the Russians, right? It depends on how you set up your defenses, and I'll show you in a second. So The other thing is that if the Russians declare war on the Germans, then that doesn't happen. That negates that whole thing. Germany does not get that surprise attack if Russia declares war on Germany. So let's just take a look at if you're planning on letting Germany declare war and why you might want to do that. So first of all, the benefit of Germany declaring war on you, and there's probably only one good one, that is that the Americans get +5 increase in their income, in their peacetime income. So that maybe brings the Americans to the war one turn closer. So you have to look at the game. Like, I can't tell you right now that you should definitely declare war first, because it might be more important for you that the Americans get into the war and that they put some pressure on the Germans. But take a look at the game though, right? Like, are the Americans, like you listen to what's going on, you hear people, you see how they're building things. Maybe they're going 100% in the Pacific and they're going after Japan. That's not going to help you very much, right? So if he's not planning on going into Western Europe anyway, then then I don't think you need to wait, right? That +5, I mean, who cares? Who cares how fast Japan gets their boats taken out? That's not going to affect you. But if they're planning, like if they built some transports and they're building some ground troops in the eastern United States, then chances are they're going to Europe with at least some. Like, hopefully he does 50-50 and he hurts the Japanese and he hurts the Germans. That helps you more than anything. There's a benefit to the Allies for that as well. But I'm just saying that helps you. If he's not planning on doing anything in the Atlantic, then I wouldn't worry about waiting. I wouldn't worry about waiting and giving the Americans that 5 anyway. So it's a really big deal. And how you would decide to declare war on the Germans is you want to get close to that full income. Your full income is 46, right? That doesn't mean you have to wait till then. You only have to wait till 1939. Now, 1939, you're probably only going to be in the teens, right? You had one income increase, unless somebody got into a territory next to you. And you don't automatically go to full income if you declare war on somebody else. That's only if somebody else declares war on you, right? So you get anywhere near that, like over 35, 40, then it's maybe not a bad idea, because it negates that surprise German attack. And the other I wouldn't do it if Germany was built up though, right? Like, if Germany was ready for you, then I don't know, man. You really got to feel the game out. Like, you got to see what's going on, right? So and if that's the case, then you've got to structure your defenses differently than what you would structure them if you were going to declare war first. And of course, you can manipulate that too. You can fake him out, make him think you're going to declare war, just so he declares war when he's not ready. Like, that's why it's such a big deal. It's a very, very complicated declaration of war, and it's so consequential in this game. The Germans, they probably are going to take out the French, and probably going to take out Poland first, and they're going to secure those places. They're going to try to secure all their holdings down there in here. Let's move this out of the way. They're probably going to try to secure all these nations down in here, right? Before they go to war with Russia. They're going to gather as many units as they can, get them on the Russian border, and then they're going to spill over into the Eastern Front, probably, right? That's the most likely course for them to do. And you've got some time, right? Now, if you get lucky with your sleeping bear rolls, or like say Germany annexes Romania and you get a free dice for that, you roll a 12 with that, and all of a sudden you're up near around 40 somewhere, like 35, 40, and the Germans haven't moved all their units over yet, right? Like, they just finished taking out Paris, and they're just down in here. They're taking out Yugoslavia. They're maybe they're chasing shiny objects in the Atlantic, right? I don't know. Again, you got to feel the game out, right? as the Russians, you don't get to dictate the play in this game. Only the Germans and the Japanese can do whatever the heck they want. You have to react to it, just like the Allies do. The Americans, they can probably make a plan and stick to it, but everybody else, they've got to react to what the Germans and the Japanese decide to do. So you've got to feel along. Now, hopefully you can do this strategy, and hopefully things fall in the right place for you to do that. But this declaration of war will go a long ways in deciding who wins the Eastern Front and how this game is going to go. So that's something that you want to be mindful of. Now, when I was saying that if the Germans are going to declare war first, you could set your defenses up. So what I would do is you move off the border there, right? You move everybody off, because when they declare war, they're only going to go one space, right? And then they can blitz two if they want to, but only their tanks and things that they pair with are going to be going further into Russia, and so they're not going to do as much damage, right? Like, they were going to take those first territories anyway, probably no matter what you did, if they were the ones to declare war. Like, if they put all their stock in Russia, then there's not much you can do about that, right? You just got to defend yourself. So moving off the border and then them declaring war, they're only going to get so far in. If you're up on the border, then they're going to slaughter a bunch of your units and then slaughter a bunch of your units in behind, right? So you're going to lose less units this way. But if you're planning on declaring war on them, like in my last game, my income increases went really well, and the Germans were just not ready for me, right? Like, they just annexed Romania, and I rolled, I think, a 10 or a 12 in here, and plus my sleeping bear roll was good in the previous turn. Like, I was up high income already. I'd saved a ton of money. So I attacked the Germans in Romania and in Finland and in a few other places. And I was able to get the jump on them before they had their force ready to attack me. So it all depends. A lot of it depends on those income increases, whether you declare war or whether they declare war. But again, big, huge moment in the game. So let's talk about the plan, the Motherland strategy, and why you do this. The whole premise of this is to isolate the Axis. What you want to do is eliminate one of your opponents. It's a three-sided game, right? So if you never ever have to fight the Allies in this game, all you have to do is fight the Axis. The Italians are probably not going to be a factor for you. The Japanese are a bit of a limited war against you. We'll talk more about them later, but mostly it's just you against Germany, right? So if you can get down to only having to fight one nation and a little bit about the Japanese, then that's how you're going to be successful. Now, there's no way that the Allies can declare war on you if you're disciplined enough. Just by playing by the rules as written, and like, you can manipulate that, right? So one of the things is that you don't declare war on the Allies, right? On any of them. Another thing is that if you take one of the Allied territories, that you give it back to them, right? You say, I've liberated this for you. I've taken the Germans out of there, and now it's yours. And so you put their roundel on it instead of yours, and you move your unit out of it. Then the Allies can't declare war on you. And then the other thing is that you don't declare war on a minor power that is not adjacent to the Soviet Union. That's not territory. That's a country, right? So here, Mongolia. There's this territory, this territory, this territory, and this territory is Mongolia, right? Now this one is not adjacent to the Soviet home country, but it doesn't need to be. It is part of Mongolia, and so that territory, this country, is adjacent to the Soviet Union. The Allies can't attack you. Let's take a look at some more here. Okay, so Afghanistan is adjacent to you. I wouldn't attack Afghanistan, but you could if you wanted to. But I wouldn't. It's not worth anything, and you're attacking mountain infantry there, and it's harsh, right? Iran is a big deal, though. You can take Iran here. That's 3 territories. That's worth 3 IPP. And it controls the Middle East. What it does is it cuts the Allies in half. See, like you've got the FEC, that's one faction, and over here you've got the British, that's another faction, right? Now you've cut them in half. They've got to use boats to help each other and to coordinate with each other. If they take Iran, then the Allies can become a beast down in the Middle East, right? But if you take Iran, then you've cut them off, and if they can't declare war on you, then they're not getting through there, right? Like they could take the Germans out if that was a German territory, but they can't take you out. And that's why it's important when you declare war on Iran, if you do, like if you're the first one to be able to declare war on them, you get there before the Axis does, then that's good for you. You want to take them all out in the same turn, right? You don't just take this one and this one and then wait, because then the British can come over and they can take out southern Iran, and now they can get to Iraq from there, right? So you didn't do your job, you didn't cut them off. You want to take all three of them, so you're flying a guy in there with an air transport, right? And you're flying planes in there, and you're trying to take Iran all in one turn. And if you're successful, then that will be yours until the Axis take you out, basically, because the Allies, if you're disciplined, are not going to get that opportunity. Now, Iraq is a different story. See, Iraq is all one territory, right? It does not border the Soviet Union, so you can't declare war on Iraq without opening yourself to a declaration of war by the Allies at some point in this game. Even if you don't own Iraq later on in the game, but you declared war on it, then the Allies can declare war on you like 10 turns from now if they want, right? Because at one point you declared war on a neutral. There's a distinction to be made, and I checked into this because I was over at Panzer King's house one day, and he had done that. He had taken Iraq, but he had talked to Morton first, and I was surprised at the answer. And I talked to Morton myself just to make sure of it before I made this video. If the Germans take Iraq, and then you take the Germans out of Iraq, you did not declare war on a minor power. You attack the Germans. So now you can take Iraq, right? You're fine to take Iraq, and the Allies cannot declare war on you. They still don't have that ability. So that's interesting. I did not know that until recently. Now, there's also Turkey, right? Even though only one territory is adjacent to you, the rest of Turkey is included with that because the country of Turkey is adjacent to the Russians. And then you move up here. So now we have Romania. You can take that one. You can take East Poland. You can take Lubelski. You could take Latvia. You could take all of Finland because they are bordering on the Soviet Union. One thing that you can't do, like here's Estonia, that one borders. Now, one of the points that you can get at the end of the game is if you have territories that include this one here, Lithuania, but Lithuania is not adjacent to you. So if you make the mistake when you sign a Molotov-Ribbentrop pact, if you do, by taking Lithuania, then they can attack you. Like the Allies can declare war on you at some point during the game. So don't take it if you're going to play this strategy. Wait for the Germans to take it. Then you can take it from the Germans, right? And then the last one here is Norway. So you can take Norway. So just those territories that I placed pies on, you can take up to 15 points, but you can only count 11 of them, right? So in the points at the end of the game, one of the things is that any territory that you did not own at the beginning of the game that you take that has an IPP value, that means it has a red number on it there. This one doesn't, so this one doesn't count, but these two do, so that's 2 right there, right? So just the ones that I put pies on right now, that's 15 territories. You can only count 11 anyway. So you're playing the Motherland strategy. All of your points are located in the Motherland except for those ones. without allowing the Allies to attack you for the whole game, you've got maximum points. You can't get any more points than that. You could take more victory cities, right? But that's a different story. Now, there's those ones, right? Oh, I forgot these ones over here. Look at the rest of Poland you can take as well. There you go. There's the 15 points. I didn't quite have enough there. But the other thing is, that only is the minor nations. You can take any German territory you want, even Berlin, right? You could take any Italian territory you want. You could take any Japanese territory you want. And the Allies can't declare war on you, right? So there you go, right? You've isolated the Allies. You froze them out of it. So the big reason why you wanted to take Iran, I already told you the one reason, but the other reason is you have very few options in this game for hurting the Allies, right? The only thing you're going to do is hurt the Axis if you can with your combat, right? But that's one way that you can hurt the Allies, is by separating the FEC from the British in the Middle East. Germany could do it too, but they can attack Germany. They can't attack you. There's just no way. They're not allowed to, right? So you've effectively cut them off for the rest of the game if Germany never goes into Iran, or if Italy never goes into Iran, or Japan, as long as you own Iran, the Allies can't touch you. So that's one way that you can hurt them. The only other way you can hurt them, and you can hurt them more, and that is with the CCP, right? If the CCP gets that role and they become a factor in China, then of course you're going to get some points in there instead of the KMT getting points for the Allies. And that will be the most effective thing. But again, that's a big wish and a hope there, right? You got to get that role early in the game. But the other one, you don't have to get the role. You just have to be smart about it. And you have to be disciplined. Like, there will be times when it looks like you're really good, right? You're overwhelming. But you have to resist the temptation to attack something else, right? Like you would want to resist the temptation to attack another nation that hadn't been taken over. Like if, say, Greece had never been taken by anybody. Well, I got lots of units. I'm taking Greece, right? Well, now the Allies can attack you. Like if you're taking it from the Greeks and not from the Germans or the Italians, then you've just opened yourself up, and you might think, well, I'm way stronger than the Allies. Well, that doesn't matter, because the reason you want to protect the motherland is that you count up your 18 points that you're going to get, and you subtract all the territories that you've lost that has an IPP value. So like if the Allies come and take this, then you just lost a point. It doesn't matter if you have 30 countries outside of Mother Russia with a point territory. You can only count 11 of them. So 11, you lose this one, now you've got 10. You lose 4 or 5 of them, well, now you've only got 5 or 6 points, right? Maybe 7. That's why you have to protect the motherland. Every point in Russia is worth a point on the victory points at the end. And that holds true for everybody. But the reason it's more important in Russia is that Russia is easier to attack. There's more territories. Like Germany only has 4 territories for their home country. The British only have 4 territories for their home country, right? So they only have to defend 4 territories, whereas you have to defend, I don't know, I didn't count them up, but it's in the 20s or 30s, right? And there's a lot of access points into Russia. So if you can eliminate the Allies from being able to do it simply by being disciplined, and you can eliminate and you can defend the other ones, like if you can keep the Axis and the Allies even, so that they're both at 10, 12 points, well, then you can think about going after this one territory that I said don't go after. That gives you a point, right? But you have to look at it late in the game. We'll talk late game strategy in coming up, but you have to look at that later. But anyway, that's a basic overview of the Motherland strategy. Let's get down to the nuts and bolts then of how you're going to pull off this plan, this Motherland. So Let's start at the beginning. Now, I've already talked about Spain and China, so I'm not going to say much about them anymore, because, like I said, you know, it's how much luck do you have there. And if you do have luck, I'll just say about China, if you do have some luck there, then good. Like if you took this place first, you've got yourself a port there, and you've got yourself a port up in Russia there. You should be able to lend lease a little bit down into there before Japan declares war on China, if they do. And so you will be able to get some things through there without having to worry about any interdiction by submarines. Now, unless the Japanese declare war on the Russians, they're not going to be able to interdict with submarines, but they can blockade the port here. And if they are at war with Japan or China, then they probably are going to have lots of ships in here, right? So if you do get a hold in there, then great. And the other thing that you can do is that if Japan has attacked China early and the KMT and the CCP have some kind of truce going there, then you could always have the Russians get to one of these other ports, right? Lend lease down to one of the KMT ports, because the Chinese can both factions can occupy the same territory if they have a truce going. So if the KMT is serious about fighting against the Japanese, like if they're worried about them, then they may allow the Russians to lend lease through there. Otherwise, if those routes get taken out, then you're going to have to build a railway through Mongolia. But that's not going to happen until 39, because you can't attack anybody until then, right? Unless you were able to influence this warlord here, because this is the only warlord that's actually adjacent to a Russian territory. Then of course you could lend lease in there after you built a railway through there. But remember, whatever you do in the pre-war era, you don't have much money, right? Like you're going to send something to Spain and on the first turn, and you're going to see how that works out for you, right? If it's not working out, then I wouldn't send anything more than 2 turns down there if things aren't going well. And you're not going to have much money. You're not going to have much of an opportunity to save money. You're not going to buy any ships. In fact, you know what? You don't even have to buy anything right off the bat. You can just put the money in the bank and see where the game is going. And, you know, after 3 or 4 turns, then you start spending your money. You've got lots of factory production. I mean, you've only got $8 anyway, right? So that's one way that you could not tip your hand to any direction that you're planning on going, is by just hanging on to your money and spending it at a later date. But it's up to you, right? Like one of the things that you want to make sure that you're doing in the pre-war era is that you're setting yourself up to take the minor powers, right? So like we talked about Iran a little bit there, right? You want to have troops on the borders to attack these 2 territories. Plus you want to have planes that can come down to southern Iran, you know, if that's something that you've decided to go for. And it's certainly something that I would do. You're going to think about Molotov ahead of time, but we've talked about that. And any of the other minor powers, you want to make sure you get set up, that you've bought enough units to take those territories, right? So there is one thing that you absolutely have to watch out for, and that's the Germans doing their double impulse against you. I've seen it done before, and it's possible. The problem with Germany doing that is that they leave France. You see how much money that France has in there. So that's how much money the Germans are going to give up if they go after Russia instead of France, right? You're used to seeing the Germans with a high income after they've taken out Paris, and they've you know, like they've established the Vichy, and maybe they got a couple of ships out of it, and you know, like things are going fairly normal. But if they don't go after the French, if they instead decide to go after the Russians, then they've put all their eggs in that basket. So if it doesn't work, if they don't get Moscow when they do their double impulse, then they're screwed. Like the Axis are screwed. So it can happen, right? Like if the Germans are back here, you know, they attack, they attack one territory, then they move forward, and then they attack another territory, and then they move forward. When I say move forward, I mean blitz, right? Like they can certainly make it to Moscow, but you got to watch for that, right? You've got to see what they're doing to set up. Like, are they not setting up to take the French? You know, are they piling a bunch of units that can blitz over here, like in Eastern Prussia or in Eastern Germany? Because they can go into Poland first, right? Without doing their double impulse move, they can go into Poland. They could be sitting on the border, and then boom, on their double impulse, they could blitz all the way to Moscow. But you have enough money and enough units that you can stop them, but only if you see it coming, right? Like if you're falling asleep, if you're you know, like if you're fooled by what they're doing and that's what they do, then it's game over for you. If they take Moscow on their double impulse, then you're done, because any money you have is gone. And just remember too, like on that turn where they attack you, that's also a surprise strike. So they're +1, you're -1, right? So it is entirely possible that they can do that. But again, you can stop them. You pile enough units in Moscow, they're not going to do it, because by the time they get there to Moscow, they have got to worry about they're on their blitz when they do that, right? And so all they've got left is their tanks and the units that they're paired with. If you put enough units in Moscow, it's unlikely that they could take it. Again, though, you have to see it coming, right? You put enough units in between, and then you've got enough units on Moscow that they can't take it. But the other thing that you have to worry about is, especially if they have long-range aircraft, is that they can fly to Moscow and drop units in there, right? If they have long-range strategic bombers, I mean, they could take off from Eastern Germany, like over in the German home country there. They can move 9 spaces with them while they're at the air base there. If they have, well, I guess they don't have an air base in Eastern Germany, but they can always put one there, right? And like that's 9 spaces. Then they're going in there and rolling 5 dice if they had a couple of them, and taking another plane with an airborne unit. So if you've only put, say, 2, maybe 3 units on Moscow, and all your other units are closer to the front, you might have just screwed yourself. So watch out for those things, okay? Those things are a death blow to you. But assuming that they don't do that, like if you start piling units there, and you may just tell them straight out, I see what you're doing, bud. You might as well turn around, because you're not getting through. Because I tell you, if Germany goes for that and they don't take Moscow, they're done too, right? The whole game is going to hinge on that one move for both of those two sides. And it's likely, if they don't make it, then probably the Allies will win, because the Germans are going to, or sorry, the Russians are going to have a dent in them, right? Germany's probably going to make it to Moscow and then fail. So, and the Russians can only attack one territory after that. The good thing for them is that they've gone to full income, right? Because the Germans declared war on them, and probably early. So they've jumped from probably less than 20 IPP all of a sudden to 46 IPP, right? And Germany didn't take out France. And so by the time the Russians get back to the border again, if they manage to get that far, you know, and a dogfight with the Germans, then they're not going to be that strong. And the Allies, with France in the game, you know, like a full France in the game. Western Europe is going to be a tough go for the Germans, right? Because the French and the British will be working together and they're right on Germany's doorstep. So anyway, assuming that doesn't happen though, you're going to build up slowly, and again, like I said earlier, you don't want to look like a threat to anybody. And it doesn't matter what strategy you're using, what strategy you're going for. You're going to do the same thing basically. You don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of choices. You could think about upgrading your factories, like I said, or one factory. I wouldn't do more than one. You don't have much money, right? You might have enough to buy a fighter or two. It'd be nice to have some, that's for sure, because a lot of the units you're going to buy early in the game are not very big hitters, right? You don't have any big hitters already. You've got a couple of light tanks, you've got a couple of planes, and other than that, you've just got infantry class units, and they're not great on offense. They're good on defense, but not great on offense, right? So getting a couple of hitters in your lineup before 1939 is a good thing. If the Germans are not going for that, going for Moscow. To start the game, again, you got this 8 IPP up here. You've got 2 ships as well. Here, let me just pause this. I'm going to go to the other side of the board there. So as far as your ships go, you've got 3 ships down here, and you've got 4 of them up here, and you've got 2 of them in the Pacific, right? The subs aren't doing you much good up here. The good thing, I guess, is that they're soaking up hits if the Germans do decide to go after Leningrad up here. But you might want to think about taking the subs and taking them to the Pacific, so that later on in the game, when you're at war with Japan, you can convoy their convoy lines, right? Like they only have 2 convoy lines, but they're worth 10 IPP, and so taking that much money off the Japanese, especially if you're if the CCP are in the game, is going to be a big help to the Comintern. Now, if the CCP aren't in the game, it's just the KMT, well, you're kind of cheering for the Japanese a little bit when it comes to the fight in China, right? Like, you don't want the KMT to be too strong in there. But anyway, if you could get those 2 subs through the northern route, and we talked about the northern route, that's along the top of the board up here, right? You can get them through to the other side, and you get them in here, and then nobody can really touch them until you're at war with Japan, and then even then it's tough to kill subs in the game, right? Japan does have a lot of planes, but at the very least what you're doing is you're tying up their planes. Now this boat here, this is something that you can get over to the other side if you want. Like, start sailing that right off the bat, because this is not going to do you any good here, this torpedo boat destroyer here. So you can start sailing that to the other side of the board, and this is a better place over here for your ships than down in here. I'll tell you that right now. Now, as far as this sub goes, I wouldn't worry too much about that sub getting to the Pacific, because it doesn't go very fast, right? Like, it's not very good at escaping. It's just not going to go very far. He's probably better off defending the Crimea here from some kind of amphibious assault. Like, I wouldn't take these ships anywhere. In fact, like, you get 2 ships to start off with, right? You don't have to purchase these ships. They go on at the end of your first turn, right? So definitely I would take the destroyer and put it up in Leningrad, and then this one you can put it in either place, right? But if you put it in here, you're allowed to go through the Turkish Straits before you're at war with anybody, and it's going to be a long time until you are. So if you put it there, then you've got lots of time to sail it down into the Pacific, right? But I wouldn't worry too much about sailing it into the Atlantic, because Germany doesn't have any convoy lines except for this one here, and that's maybe a good reason why you'd keep a sub up here, is when the Germans and the Russians do go to war, maybe they don't have a bunch of ships here, and maybe you can get out here to convoy that line, right? That's the only line that the Germans have. the Italians, their convoy line is only worth 1. So the Japanese convoy line is worth 10. So that's something you can think about, where to get your ships. What I wouldn't worry about is buying any transports and sailing them off anywhere. As much fun as it is to go on excursions to Africa or South America or anywhere in the world for that matter, it's not going to help you. You're not going to get any more points out of this game. And in fact, you could end up hurting yourself if you go and take a minor power somewhere, and then now the Allies at some point during the game can declare war on you. So anyway, that's the pre-war era. When 1939 rolls around, well, now it's time for you to start taking some minor powers, and we've already talked about that. I don't need to go over it again. You're going to set up during the pre-war, and as long as Germany hasn't done something weird, then you're going to be able to go and get them, like Iran and Mongolia and places like that. Don't overextend yourself, though. Don't worry about getting all those things early, because that'll just make you look strong, right? You want to look weak. So if you just take a little bit here, a little bit there, like all those pies that I put on the board earlier, all those roundels, you've got the whole game to get those roundels there, and you don't even have to get them all, right? You just need to get most of those, and you're fine. But you've got all game to do that, so don't worry about going out too fast. The only good thing about taking a lot of minor powers early is that you get some more money, right? And that's helpful. So now you're starting to think about saving money if you can. Again, Germany's going to dictate that, right? You're going to keep an eye on those buggers. But hopefully you can save some money, and you'll save a little bit here, a little bit there, hopefully lots. Like if Germany's completely ignoring you, save a ton of it, right? Like your income's 30, save 20, don't tell anybody. Say, look at how much money I got. Don't do that. Just save it, and just don't say anything. If somebody catches you, like if they say, hey, look, Russia's saving money, say, yeah, I didn't really know what to do with it, and I'm going to see what Germany's going to do, and ho-hum, and, kick a can or something, and, like you don't really know what you're doing, right? But what you're doing is you're saving for that declaration of war, regardless of who does it, whether it's the Germans or the Russians, you're going to spend all that money, and you're going to get a ton of units. And that's why you got the improved factories, right? So anyway, you're going to set up based on what the Germans are doing. I can't tell you exactly what to do, but because I don't know what the Germans are doing in the game that you're going to play. But just set up and try not to look too tough. Don't worry about taking a whole bunch early. Again, it's not necessary. I've already talked about the declarations of war and all that's involved with that. There's no need to go over it again. Just basically manage the war. Make sure that you don't leave Moscow unattended. The last thing you want on any turn is to lose your money, even if it's easy to take it back. You don't want to lose your money, because that will probably mean that you're going to lose the game. Like, you can't win, I don't think, if you lose your money on a turn in this game, because your income's going to be somewhere between 40 and 60 IPP in the mid game if you're doing okay. Like if Germany's beating the crap out of you, but anyway, the other thing is you're going to be watching, and we did talk about this with the diplomacy part. You're going to be watching what's going on. Is Germany getting any help on the backside? You're going to be, trying to talk your allies into doing something on the Western Front, or sending you some money or some units or something like that, pointing out how good it's going to be for them if you're a bigger speed bump for Germany, right? Like Germany's going to be less of a threat to them if they're a bigger threat to you. So try to get something out of them, right? I don't know that they will, but again, that's why you want to look as weak as you can until all of a sudden you put all those units on the board, right? And then everybody's going to go, well, he's not as weak as what he looked like, right? But anyway, that's mid-game, right? You're basically setting up, you're going to war, and then you're managing the war. And I've made videos before about cities. Like use your terrain features, and there's not many of them over here, right? There's a lot of wide open ground over here, not a lot of mountains or anything. There is down, when you get in the east and when you get down south, but up there on the eastern front, there's not a lot of terrain. What there is these two cities right here. Use those two cities to your advantage. Like if you're piling infantry class units in there, they're cheap, right? Germany's coming in with tanks and stuff to fight them. Well, those things are not so cheap. So they're exchanging tanks for your infantry, and that's how you're going to catch them, is by it's all about the IPPs, right? It's always all about the IPPs in this game, in Axis and Allies, in basically any game. Who's got the most money? Because the most money buys the most units, right? And then the most units takes the more territory, right? And that's basically what you're trying to do. And that's one way you can do it, is by using the terrain in this game. But at the same time, cities can be a burden to you. If you allow your city to get surrounded, then all of a sudden your units are -1 instead of +1 for your infantry class units. So be careful that your city doesn't get surrounded. And like if you're attacking somebody, then definitely you want to try to surround their city before you attack them, right? Just use that. Another thing you got to worry about is Transcaucasia. You do not want to lose your oil down here. Like this territory is worth 5, plus it's worth 2 to the Germans, right? That's one of their objectives, one of their national objectives. So that territory is a turnaround. If the Germans take that territory, that's a 12 IPP turnaround. 5 off of you and 7 onto them, right? That's a death knell. And that's something that they can reach really easily by dropping units from the air as well. Like you look at Romania over here. Germans will be in possession of Romania for much of this game. Hopefully you can take it at some point, but there's an air base there. And besides that, it's only three territories away, right? And so Transcaucasia is vulnerable. You can't lose Transcaucasia. You have to make sure that's one of your priorities in this game. Okay? Definitely you want to take as much of Mongolia as you can. The other thing is during the pre-war and the mid-game, before Japan and Russia go to war, there's the border clashes with the Japanese. Now, one of the ways to eliminate those border clashes is just to move your units out of there. Like just get them, like don't be on the border. If you're not on the border, then they can't attack you, right? I mean, they can move their troops in, but then they've declared war on you. Bam, you went to full income. The Americans went up 5 IPP. Like, you don't want to do this, in 1943. I'm talking about earlier in the game, right? 1938, 1939, maybe even 1940. Like, that'd be a good way to goad Japan into coming after you. But if they put a bunch of planes, for instance, on the border here, and they're just picking you off, move off the border. They can't pick you off if you're a turn away, or if you're a territory away from the border. And it's enticing them to come in and get these territories, and then you've gone to full income, and there you go, right? Another thing you want to do at some point probably in the mid-war is to get a factory or two. Like, you want to get a factory down here, for instance, somewhere down here. I don't know exactly where, because again, you got to see what's going on in the game, right? You do want it in the motherland, though. Like, don't put it in Iran, or don't put it in Turkey. Make sure you put it in the motherland, right? And it's also good to get a factory up there where we just were, somewhere up there, so that you can secure the eastern part of the country over there. Because again, like this territory here, you take that out, that's actually 2 points that's 2 points that you lose, because one of the points that you get is having a railway from here to Moscow, and of course that would break the railway if you lose that. Plus, this territory is worth an IPP value, so you would lose a point for losing that territory. And again, with Amur, same thing, right? Cheetah, all of these territories here that are worth a point, you lose 2 points at the end of the game for it, because you need that railway that goes over there. So having a factory up there is going to allow you to move units around a lot easier, to stack up the East Coast for the end of the game when people want to go in there and take your points out, right? Anyway, so that's basically the mid game. Let's come back and finish this off. The late game, well, that's not that's not rocket science. Basically, what you're doing is you're chasing your points, and you're trying to limit your opponents from getting points, right? So the last 2-3 turns of the game, that's what you're focused on. Hopefully, the war on the Eastern Front, hopefully you've gained control over it. You've isolated Germany, and you've somehow managed to gain control. The Americans are in the war, and the Allies are putting pressure on, and they're taking back France. So Germany's in a bad way. In a perfect world, that's what we're hoping for, right? So then you start going for your points. So I talked about the territories outside of outside, like that you didn't own at the beginning of the game. Those you can count up to 11 points with the territories that have a red number that you didn't own at the start of the game, right? Eastern security. So score 1 victory objective if the USSR can trace that supply path using railroads. So again, this railroad starting here all the way to Moscow, that's a point, right? Ice-free port. Score 1 if the USSR possess either a major naval base with a sea zone number 8 or greater, or Crimea and Istanbul. So Crimea is you'd have to take out Turkey in order to get that one. So this is actually another point that could be worth 3 points, right? Because there's your major naval base. This sea zone is sea zone number 38. That's why you don't need to hold Republican Spain at the end of the game, because you can use this one. And if you don't get that one, then that's a point that you can chase somewhere, right? Like in Iran there, you can upgrade the naval base in southern Iran to a major naval base. You know, you can you chase your points, like you try to get a territory that has that, right? It's not that tough to do. Then when we talked about technology, we talked about those technology points, right? Getting those 4 things: the heavy bombers, the long-range aircraft, the strategic rockets, and the heavy armor, and that's going to get you a point. And then the other one, the last one, is buffer zone. And so basically what you need here, let's just set this up. So what you need is Eastern Poland, Lubelski, and then the 3 Baltic territories here. So remember, we're not going to take Lithuania unless Germany takes it, or, you know, late in the game, if we don't think that the Allies can hurt us anywhere, maybe you take Lithuania. But you do not want to take Lithuania just to get 1 point and have the Allies come into your home motherland and take you out, you know, for 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 points, right? It's just not worth it, right? So take that point at your peril, right? Take a look at what's going on. You know, maybe the Allies are just not a factor in the game. Like maybe the Axis beat the crap out of them, and you're still holding your own, right? So that's what you're going to do, is you're going to chase your points, and you're going to protect the motherland. That's more important than all of the other points, because a territory lost with an IPP value is a point lost, right? There's some points that are available if the CCP get China, but again, you know, you gotta be lucky early in the game to get China. So if you can, you can. If you can't, you can't. Don't worry about it. You can win this game without taking China, without taking Republican Spain. You can do it. But anyway, good luck. Try this strategy. Even elements of this strategy. The early game is something you're going to want to do anyway. Saving that little bit of money, as long as you don't lose Moscow while you're saving money, there you go. You know, at some point in time, you're going to get a turn where you can buy cheap units, and cheap units you will buy. So absolutely, that's something that should be part of any Russian strategy. Anyway, thanks for joining me on this video, and I hope you learned something. I hope I give you some ideas, even if you don't do exactly what I told you to do here. And I can't tell you exactly what to do because I'm not Germany or Japan here, right? And so hopefully you've learned something, and it's inspired you to think about, well, yeah, that's great, but I don't think he's ever thought of this. And, like you add something to it, right? Or you take something away. Anyway, that's all I got for you today, folks. So take care. General Hand Grenade out.